Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for March 31st through April 6th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 3 movies, and I listened to 1 book. Hello from sunny Strasbourg. It's supposed to get up to 24 degrees Celsius today. Yesterday we went on a day trip and I believe it got up to 28 degrees Celsius, which was a little bit much, but we saw a plethora of sidewalk lizards, so I was well pleased. I didn't exactly know they had those here in France, but they definitely do in this very small village that we visited. The first book that I finished this week is Good Morning Darling. This one came out this week and I read it as an ARC from the author, so thank you for that. This one is dual perspective between this woman named Ella and this person named Eugene. This falls into the category of cozy horror, so there's definitely horror things going on, but it's also a romance, and there's sections of it that are very, very cozy, which honestly just reminds me of reading I'm in Love with Mothman. In this one, Ella has lived across the state from her parents for about 5 years, but she's decided that she needs to come back to Seattle to kind of figure out what she wants to do with her life. This means having to move back in with her parents temporarily, and then also having to be around the family business, which is death, which is something she's not been completely comfortable with in the past. Our other point of view character, Eugene, is somebody who works for the family, and unbeknownst to Ella, has worked for the family for a very, very long time. Ella has had a crush on Eugene previously, so meeting back up with him after all this time hasn't really changed that, and it goes from here. If you're looking for some representation in your characters, Ella is bisexual, biracial, and autistic. As for Eugene, I have a feeling that he's somewhere on the ace and or aro spectrum, but that wasn't exactly confirmed in the text, and I haven't looked it up in other sources. However, there is a romance component to this, and there's also definitely other things that happen, so if he is on either of those spectrums, he's not hard to one side of one of those spectrums. I found this one pretty fun. It was interesting to kind of go through this as Ella was going through it and trying to figure out what's going on in this world that she thought she knew, and then realizes there's more to it. And it was also really fun to kind of figure out what Eugene was getting out of this situation and what his motivations were. If it sounds like there's an airplane about to take off, it's fine, it's just Chad, he's got a laptop, he's setting it up, and it's doing things. I also had to close the window to film this video because we're next to a very, very busy street here in Strasbourg, so if I start to get a little bit dewy, no I didn't, you didn't see that. Not to mention, of course, I'm sitting here drinking hot coffee because that's what I have access to, and that's what's waking up my brain, not that it's doing a very good job of making me articulate. The other book that I finished this week actually comes out next week, so again I read this one as an ARC from NetGalley, and this one is A Sweet Sting of Salt. This one is a historical fiction set in Nova Scotia, and it's also a Selkie story, so if you happen to know what that is, you know what the twist is. However, the main character of this doesn't really understand that's the twist until 90% of the way through, which is actually kind of fun to watch, because going in, I know what a Selkie is. If you don't want to know what a Selkie is, maybe skip forward like 30 seconds. But a Selkie comes from Scottish mythology, and it's basically a person who can take off their seal skin and walk around on land and then put their seal skin back on, and then they're a seal in the water. It's that kind of mythology, but sometimes people have stolen the skins, and then those Selkies actually have to follow the directions of the people who stole their skins. As it's pointed out in the text, some people think that this is like a romantic tale of how somebody met their wife, and some people, rightfully so, are like, that's not really correct. Maybe give people their stuff back and don't make them marry you because you stole their stuff. But that's also exactly what happened in this. See, the main character in this one is the midwife for this area, and one day she comes back to her very remote cottage in the woods, and that night she hears this screaming outside. When she gets outside, there's this woman. She ends up having a baby at her house, and then she realizes this woman must be the new wife of her neighbor. So she goes to find the neighbor and is like, hey, missing a wife, I've got her, she's fine, your baby's fine, they're both happy and healthy. However, when she sees them interacting, she gets kind of this weird vibe, and because the wife basically speaks no English, she decides that she wants to keep the wife there for like a week just to make sure that she can show her all these things that she would usually just be able to tell to somebody, but because there's a language barrier, she's like, yeah, it's gonna take about a week until she's actually fit to be moved because like the elements aren't really great, so like maybe just leave her here, I'll teach her some things, it'll be fine. As the wife spends the week there, she does pick up on some English, they are able to talk a little bit, but because of this barrier, there's so much that goes unsaid, and there's so much of this tale that unfolds over time, especially especially because after this week they don't have a lot of time together, and when they do have time together it's stolen moments. This is Sapphic, it's Fade to Black. These aren't the only queer characters in the story, which is always great to see, especially in a historical fiction, because there's never only just one or two queer people. There's other queer people, and as the saying goes, we tend to find each other. If you're looking for queer historical fiction, if you're looking for something sapphic, if you're looking for something kind of like a fairy tale, this is a good one to pick up. As for movies this week, we watched Spider-Man 3, which is the third of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, and this is the one where the symbiote is there, and also Peter Parker becomes kind of a dipshit at a point, kind of emo, if you will. The thing that always sticks in people's minds is the really bad dancing as he's kind of going through his am I gonna be a dickhead now whole thing. But nowhere in my brain had I stored the information that he actually did a really cool dance with Gwen Stacy at the nightclub where Mary Jane works at, because the theatricality of that is something I absolutely loved. The reason he was doing it I absolutely hated, so maybe that's why I deleted it from my brain from many, many years ago. But there we are. I didn't hate it as much as the internet seems to hate it. Following this, we moved on to The Amazing Spider-Man, which is the first of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans. And this was actually my first time seeing this movie because for whatever reason, I just hadn't seen the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I was probably busy, I was probably confused why they were rebooting them, and by the time I got around to thinking about watching them, there was now Marvel Spider-Man movies, so like, I just skipped them. Which is a shame because Andrew Garfield makes an adorable Spider-Man. In this first Amazing Spider-Man movie, the adversary is Curt Connors. This is also the origin story, so these are very long movies. You get the whole origin of what happens, or how it happened in this universe in any case, and then Curt Connors is somebody who actually used to work with Peter Parker's dad, and he's trying to push forward this thing because he's got this pressure because his boss is about to die if he doesn't make this medical breakthrough, so he tests it on himself, and obviously there's dire circumstances, and Spider-Man ends up having to fight this reptile, who, yes, is played by the same person that was Hugh Grant's roommate in Notting Hill, and played Rasputin in that prequel thing from the Kingsman trilogy. The actor's first name is Reese. I cannot remember his last name, but he is so versatile that I never realize it's him until I see credits. I'm like, oh, that guy again. After that, we moved on to The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and the villain in this one is Electro, played by Jamie Foxx. And listen, I enjoyed this. I really wish they had actually made the third one because I would like to know what was happening with those cutscenes at the end of the movies. And obviously, having seen Far From Home, there was something that happened in this movie that I knew was going to happen because it was talked about quite briefly in that movie. But even though I knew it was going to happen, that didn't make it any less heartbreaking in the moments when it happened. Like, I could already tell there was a moment in Far From Home when Spider-Man 2, let's just call him Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, actually catches MJ, and I could tell just by the way he acted it that that was such a cathartic moment, and I knew exactly why, and I went into this movie knowing that was going to happen, and it happened, and I kind of wanted to cry. So yeah, I really love Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I'm really sad that it took me all this time to actually get into watching his films. The audiobook I listened to this week is Warrior Girl Unearthed. This is somewhat of a companion novel to Firekeeper's Daughter. I can't tell you exactly how long it's been since that novel because I completely forgot to look it up. But if I'm remembering correctly from that novel, which I absolutely adored, Adonis was probably, I believe Adonis was the main character in that one, and in this one, she is the aunt of the main character. So I think that's how that's going. I also feel like there's been somewhat of a time jump as well, but I completely forgot to look up how old these characters were in the last book. That being said, you do not need to read that book to understand this book whatsoever. However, it is really good, so I highly suggest it. But if you just want to jump right into this one, you go right ahead because you don't need to know any of that backstory. Anything that you need from that is explained within the text. Our main character in this one, I believe her name is Perry. It's short for something and I honestly can't remember what it is right now. She has a twin sister and they have two very different ways they think their summer is going to go. Her twin sister is going to be doing an internship for the local council and she just wants to spend the whole summer fishing. However, something at the very beginning of the summer makes it so that she actually has to pay her aunt back a bunch of money, so she ends up having to do this internship as well. While she's there, she ends up being assigned to this guy who runs their museum, and from there she ends up going to a meeting at the university where they're talking about the repatriation of artifacts and human remains. And this goes very deeply into the laws that were put in place and the agreements that were put in place to return these types of items, and how very few institutes have actually done that, and how it's a very slow political game you need to play in order to maybe get things back. In addition to that, during the course of this novel, more Indigenous women start to go missing in the area, and there's searches for that. This is a very impactful novel with a bunch of different moving pieces. There's a romance, there's a heist element, there's all these relationships she's trying to maintain with family, with friends, with people in the community. I just absolutely loved this. I'm going to have to read everything this author ever writes because she just writes such engaging stories, and I just want to keep listening or reading and finding out what's going to happen next. Alright, I can feel myself getting sweaty because the window is closed, so I think that's about the end of the video. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!